The story of how I kind of came about all of this is actually a little bit more different than you would expect. Believe it or not, I really didn't like cars all that much until I was around 17 or 18 years old. I had a license. I mean, I liked sports cars. I thought they were really cool looking, but I didn't really understand why people were into driving them or anything of that sort. And it wasn't until a friend of mine invited me along to go for a joyride in his dad's Mustang Cobra that I really truly realized I did like cars. I think the issue there was that I had only driven very slow economy-based cars, and man, the minute he hit the throttle in that Mustang, I was hooked. It's been downhill or uphill, whichever you want to call it, from that day on. The enthusiasm for the cars was always an enthusiasm, but it didn't really go anywhere until I started doing track days. And believe it or not, there was a very well-known gentleman who brought his Ferrari F50 out to the racetrack, which, as you know, is an extremely, extremely rare vehicle. And I literally ran up to him as he opened his trailer and asked him for a ride. Basically decided that I was going to get a ride in that car one way or another. And so every single session he went out, I was standing next to him in his car asking him, hey, can I go for a ride this session? What about this session? And eventually, at the end of the day, he finally said, fine, kid, get in the car. So I got in the car, I went for a ride, and that was literally the experience of a lifetime. And I realized after going in that ride that, on the trajectory and path that I was on at the moment, I was never ever going to be able to drive or own a vehicle like that ever again. And I realized that the only way that things were going to change is if I started my own business. And so that was really the impetus that got me into starting something a little bit more different. So you can imagine 21-year-old Eddie, who has little to no experience with anything, has suddenly gone for a ride in an F50, a $1 million car at that point, and decided that he's going to try to live a life where he gets to see those kinds of cars and drive those kinds of cars. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just knew that I needed to start my own business. And conveniently, a friend of mine decided that he also wanted to kind of dabble in this new internet marketing thing that was happening. This was 2001 approximately, so internet was relatively new. And his idea was to start a website, essentially, to sell car parts. Some of you may know, if you were part of the industry, the silicon wafer industry was the industry that I was working in 2002 at that time. And the industry crashed. And it didn't just crash, it crashed hard. We went and lost maybe 90% of our gross volume in a 30-day period. And the entire industry came to a halt. And so I lost my job. And, not knowing what else to do, I decided to throw everything I had into this, web business that we had kind of dabbled after the last year. And it did okay. It actually, the wild, wild west of the early internet years were pretty cutthroat and very unregulated. There was a lot of volume to be made, maybe not necessarily a lot of money to be made if you were in the sector that I was at, but I made a decent living at it, and eventually realized that the web margins were so small that we needed to do something that was a little more service oriented. And so I took a leap and decided to open a service shop. Now, you have to understand, one, I'd never run a service business. Two, I never really professionally worked on cars. And three, I really had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to service cars because I thought it was the right direction to go. So I sold my house. I got very, very lucky. I bought my house in 2001 and I sold it in 2006, which was the absolute peak of the market. And I took all that money that I made in the house and I pumped it in this business that I knew nothing about. And I have to tell you, that also happened to coincide with the big crash of 2008, which made for a very miserable next 4 years attempting to keep this business alive and afloat and learning all the hard lessons at the same time. But somehow, through a lot of difficult times and eating a lot of Subway, which was the sandwich shop next to the shop that gave me free sandwiches because I was too poor to buy food, we expanded to the point where we decided that we wanted to do more motorsports. And we didn't have a good idea of what direction we wanted to go with it. At first, I just wanted to do service, but we started to get so many motorsports customers that we decided to acquire our own facilities just for motorsports. And I won't lie, we were pretty terrified that we would get this big, large new facility and have this huge overhead and find out that there really wasn't enough motorsports business in the Pacific Northwest to support a facility of this size. But I'm happy to report that 4 years later, we are absolutely busting at the seams and already looking at potentially getting an expansion. So it sounds like we made the right move, but you know, whether that was through pure luck, a little bit of grit, a little bit of stubbornness, hard to say, maybe a little bit of everything. Okay, so a lot like the way our original service business started, we're not experts at this whole video thing, but we're gonna try to build something that's interesting and engaging. And you know, sometimes what we think is interesting and engaging isn't what you think is interesting and engaging. So let us know what you want to see. Ask us questions that you want to have us address, and you know, give us an idea of what you're looking for, and we can kind of tailor what we're building so that we can all have fun and learn more about this industry.